there was a little back and forth there going on between you and one of Fernando Vargas' son. So talk to me about that. Let everyone know what's going on.
So I mean, I called them out, just due to the fact that their dad's talking about my uncle, and saying that Tito used dirty hand wraps. In no moment in my uncle's career has he ever used dirty hand wraps. So I'm pretty sure people would love to see Trinidad versus Vargas. I say Trinidad Legacy versus Vargas Dynasty, second part, people would love to see that. So he was just talking about some smack, about some sparring and all that, and I don't really get too much into it. Like every fighter, we've all had good days, bad days, but most of the time I was getting the best of him in sparring. His dad, they would ask for 6, 7, 8 rounds. I would beat them 4 or 5 rounds, and his dad would pull him out of the sparring sessions, they're not ready, they're not that conditioned. When you step in there and you're asking to get work, it's not about being conditioned or not, and you're asking somebody to give you 8, 9 rounds of sparring, you better stick through, you better bring, and then he was calling me trash and this and that, and I'm like, bro, I ain't trash. Just because I have one loss, I'm not afraid to take a loss. I'm like, you got a record. A lot of people in the comments were saying he was giving one of his last fights. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to talk a lot of smack or nothing. I told him, I was like, look, you can comment all you want. You can say all you want. At the end of the day, there can be a lot of talk, but let's prove it in the ring. Let's see who's better. Let's see who's the best, And then Amado came and he was talking about, I want a payday. So, I called them out all three. Let's do a three-peat, not just in basketball. Three-peats don't have to be just in basketball. Like I said, I'll take Amado down, then I'll take Junior, and after Junior, I'll take Emiliano. You know what I mean? Save the best for last. So,
wow, you want all that smoke? Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm not holding back. A lot of people say, I live off my uncle's name. I barely started, having a relationship like that with my uncle, because I didn't want to use his name. Because I know people were going to start talking and saying that I'm living off my uncle's legacy, his name, but at the end of the day, I never started using it. I made my own career. He offered to help. So now that he offered to help, of course, I'm going to take his help to open up those big fights that anybody would want, and I'm definitely looking forward for what the future brings. Like I said, that's what I have my eyes set on. Hopefully, we can get that deal done. We can get that fight done. And if not right now, sometime in the future, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Let's talk quickly about your uncle and Vargas, because I've seen both interviews with your uncle and Vargas in regards to what has been talked about, and what's your thoughts on everything? What's your thoughts? Because in my opinion, I looked at your uncle as a puncher more than a boxer,
Yes.
And Fernando Vargas was a good boxer. I would say he was a good boxer. I saw him do some good work.
Yes.
But going back to that fight, if I'm not mistaken, I recall hearing George Foreman, may he rest in paradise. I recall hearing George Foreman say, "Don't hook with a hooker," and Vargas made that mistake.
Yes.
And he paid the price.
Well, it's like the video I posted. My uncle set him up with the right, hit him with the right, and after he hit him with the right, feinting him again, acting like he was going to throw a right, aiming for it, but then he threw the left hook right after. And he basically hurt him right away. If we see the early rounds in the fight, I give props to Vargas, because there was no way after getting dropped that early in the fight for a fighter to come back, and give a good fight. Not just that, but he dropped my uncle. My uncle even said it. He has great power, but you also got to give props where it's due. You gotta say the truth, like, let's talk about more like Bernard Hopkins. People think, oh, B-Hop, he exposed Trinidad. No. Even Bernard Hopkins said, my uncle moved up from 147 to 160 to fight Bernard Hopkins, okay? During the time of 9/11. Now, I'm not making no excuses for my uncle because my uncle doesn't even use that as an excuse, But when you look at it, it's like even Bernard Hopkins said, Trinidad's didn't have no dirty hand rounds. We just made it a big deal so that we can throw him off his game plan. He said it in the interview not too long ago. You talk to Fernando's coach, actually. Fernando's old coach, Garcia, actually admitted in the interview that Trinidad wasn't using dirty hand wraps. I know because my grandpa was the one who wrapped his hands for that fight that there was no way possible that my grandpa used dirty hand wraps for that. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of talk. At the end of the day, you got to be willing to take the loss, and not try to taint somebody else's name because you weren't able to get the best of that fighter.
Well, now that you mentioned that Hopkins fight, Vargas did mention that fight during an interview, and he said that why wasn't your uncle able to knock out Hopkins? But my thing is that your uncle was moving up in weight, so it's not easy for him to knock out bigger guys. So it just doesn't make sense what Vargas is saying.
No, and that's like if you really look at my uncle's record, out of 42 fights he's won, 35 were my knockout. That's an impressive amount of knockouts for the amount of fights that he had. So you got to give props where they're due. He was a puncher. He was a strong puncher at that. I don't understand why Fernando can say so many things, but yet he got knocked out by Ricardo Mayorga. Somebody that's coming into the ring smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer, and not really taking the sport as serious. And my uncle knocked Mayorga down and out really good, like no problem, Another thing, one of the proofs that you get from my uncle being a puncher, everybody knew Oscar De La Hoya was a banger. He was a boxer brawler. He was a boxer brawler. He stood there toe-to-toe with what they called the best Mexican fighter ever, Julio Cesar Chavez. That was a bloodbath, toe-to-toe. Why didn't he do that with Trinidad? Why didn't he stand there with Trinidad? Guess what? After round number 5, he got on that bicycle, started running, you know what I mean? So right there and then, you should tell you, okay, Trinidad's a dangerous fighter. He's a dangerous puncher. I don't know what was the big deal, of him having to say that. It's all right. You lost against a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest fighters ever. There's no shame in that. My uncle, he lost to 3 of the greatest fighters, all 3 Hall of Famers. Bernard Hopkins, Winky Wright, and Roy Jones Jr. And the Roy Jones Jr. fight, he went up all the way to light heavyweight to fight that fight.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I was just thinking, with everything being said, it would make sense if it was someone like Whitaker knocking out Vargas, because Whitaker, as great as he was, he didn't have that kind of power that your uncle had. So it would make more sense there. But, Tito Trinidad was known as a puncher. He was knocking everyone out. So it's not a surprise that he knocked out Fernando Vargas. I mean, It's like we can say the same thing about Mike Tyson. Well, Mike Tyson maybe was cheating because he's knocking everyone out. No, Mike Tyson is a puncher.
Yeah.
When you compare Mike Tyson to someone like Lennox Lewis, I would call Lennox Lewis a boxer and Mike Tyson a puncher.
That is right. You know, Lennox Lewis was a great boxer at the time. Mike Tyson, he was ferocious. You know, and that's what I tell. Like, you see the demeanor, the way they both fought. You could see the animal in Mike and the way he was. He was merciless against his opponents. You know, George Foreman at the start of his career, even at the end of his career, bro, you cannot take away the fact that George Foreman was a puncher. George Foreman wasn't the greatest boxer ever, but he had a right hand that if it would catch you, I guarantee you it would put you to sleep. I don't care how young you were or how strong you were, it would put you to sleep.
Exactly. So, with everything being said, what's your thoughts on this Vargas kid? You know that you want to fight. What's your thoughts on him? You must have seen him fight. What's your thoughts on him?
I mean, there's more than fight. We have history. You know, me and him, we used to train together. You know, I trained together with his dad, with Fernando, trained me 2 years in my amateur career. You know, we used to spar all the time, you know, and they know. There's a reason why you see in the comments they're talking about, oh, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to bless you with this money, this and that, bro. It's not about blessing me. It's like, if you want to take the fight, take the fight. If you don't want to take the fight, keep putting all these excuses and all that. I told him, I was like, bro, you've been more active than me. What's the excuse? You've been fighting more than me. What's the excuse? What are you going to say? Oh, I haven't? Come on now, bro. Come on. Let's not make excuses. Let's go ahead, make it happen, seal the deal. You know, at the end of the day, it's a big name fight. Everybody wants to see it. You know, we saw in the comments people were going crazy about it. What's the excuse? Oh, the other one, Amado, was like, oh, get your clout up. Come on, bro. This ain't no YouTuber. This ain't no YouTube boxing. This ain't nothing like that. This is real boxing, bro. You want to call yourself a professional boxer? Be a professional boxer. Stop trying to act like, oh, you ain't got enough fame. You ain't got enough clout, bro. I don't need no clout. I don't need no fame. I'm known by the people that have given me the opportunity to be known, and all glory to God that I'm in the position that I'm at. But guess what? 12-1 is a good record. If you feel like you can beat me, you can do the same thing you did to Sean Garcia. Let's see. You know what I mean? He knows he ain't going to do that. There's the reason why they're avoiding the fight. There's the reason why they want to use comments and they want to use their image. At the end of the day, I'm not about that. It's either you get it done, your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. But what you just said doesn't make sense. It actually shocks me because Fernando Vargas, you know, being their father, he was willing to fight everyone, win or lose. So it's just surprising that his kids are talking like this.
I mean, the fact that you can go back to the post and look at the comments and read them, at the end of the day, even people were saying, oh, you guys are scared. You guys are mad. These guys, people were like, you're the true champ, bro. Like, these kids are scared. And at the end of the day, they're making themselves look bad. I don't have to, bro. I came outside. I came in an interview, no fear, said what I had to say, boss in their court.
You know, with everything being said right now, I just saw an interview with De La Hoya, and he actually said that he's fed up with some of these fighters right now who always talk about social media, and they talk about money, but they don't talk about legacy. like when he was fighting, when your uncle was fighting. They don't talk about legacy.
Well, at the end of the day, that's what this sport's supposed to be about. You're supposed to leave your name. You know, back in the day, you had Ivan Calderon, FelixTrinidad, you know, Fernando Vargas. You had big names, bro. Oscar De La Hoya, Mike Tyson. You had huge names. And they were not afraid to fight anybody. Everybody would fight everybody because it was about getting the titles, leaving your name in the Boxing Hall of Fame, and being considered one of the greatest boxers of all time. Why? Because you want everybody to remember you in your life that way. You want everybody to remember you as one of boxing's great. Nowadays, nobody's doing that. Nobody wants to fight each other. Everybody's avoiding each other. So what's the point? You know, that's what people look at. It's like, what's the point of that? You know?
Yeah.
So I look at it as like, let's go. Let's make some legacy. I want to leave my name just like my uncle left his name and legacy. I want to go back home when I go see my people in Puerto Rico, and they're like, oh, man, that's one of our greatest fighters right there, one of our greatest champions. To this day, you go to Puerto Rico, my uncle hasn't fought in years, retired, but he's still one of the main fighters that everybody talks about. Everybody, I don't care if you're an up-and-coming fighter, you're under the shadow of FelixTrinidad in Puerto Rico.